just throwing it away. Look at your palm gonna need it someday. Better hold to your money. Better hold to your money. Better hold to your money, cause you gonna need it someday.
In the last installment, I mentioned that the very respected Catholic Encyclopedia provides a rationalization for the Church's changing dogma regarding usury. It's my intention to analyze each of the excuses provided by the encyclopedia, and we'll see whether they hold water. In this installment, we're going to look at the encyclopedia's contention that until the 4th century, all that can be inferred from the Fathers and ecclesiastical writers is that it is contrary to mercy and humanity to demand interest from a poor and needy man. And I don't dispute this particular statement by the encyclopedia. Let's look at a couple examples from the 3rd century. St. Clement of Alexandria said, "The law prohibits a brother from taking usury, designating as a brother not only him who is born of the same parents, but also one of the same race and sentiments, and a participator of the same word." St. Cyprian said, "While they had brethren starving in the church, they tried to amass large sums of money and took possession of estates by fraudulent proceedings. They multiplied their gains by accumulated usuries." But the paragraph in the Catholic Encyclopedia continues. "The vehement denunciation of the Fathers of the 4th and 5th centuries were called forth by the moral decadence and avarice of the times, and we cannot find in them any expression of a general doctrine on this point. Nor do the Fathers of the following centuries say anything remarkable on usury. They simply protest against the exploitation of misfortune and such transactions as, under the pretense of rendering service to the borrower, really threw him into great distress." So the Catholic Encyclopedia says that we cannot find in them any expression of a general doctrine on this point in the writings of the Church Fathers of the 4th and 5th century. Well, let's see if that's true. Let's look at some examples and see if we can find an expression of a general doctrine. St. Ambrose said, "If someone accepts usury, he commits robbery. He shall not live." Well, the Catholic Encyclopedia just told us that the Fathers didn't say anything remarkable on usury. Yet St. Ambrose says that a usurer commits robbery and shall not live. St. Gregory of Nyssa said, "Keep on resisting this sin. You are the ruin of those who take and hold you. You bring a brief moment of pleasure, but as time goes on, your poison is noxious to the soul. You block the way that leads to life and close the gates of the kingdom. Having briefly delighted the eye and been a topic of conversation, you are the cause of endless woe. You strip the naked, injure the wounded, and pile care upon care and woe upon woe." The Catholic Encyclopedia just told us that it couldn't find any expression of a general doctrine from the Fathers, but St. Gregory of Nyssa just told us that usury is sinful. St. John Chrysostom said, "Let us cut out the evil womb of usurious gains. Let us deaden these lawless travailings. Let us dry up this place of pernicious teeming, and let us pursue the true and great gains only." So St. John Chrysostom calls usury evil and says it's lawless. That would seem to constitute an expression of general doctrine to me. St. John continued, "Lend unto him," meaning God, "who wants nothing, yet has need for your sake, who feeds all men, yet is hungry, that you may not suffer famine, who is poor, that you may be rich. Lend there, where your return cannot be death, but life instead of death. For nothing is baser than the usury of this world, nothing more cruel." And here again St. John Chrysostom refers to usury as being base and cruel. Again, it seems to be a statement of general doctrine. St. Augustine said, "I would not have you be lenders of money on usury, and I would not have you be such for this reason, because God would not have you. How detestable, odious, and execrable a thing it is. I believe that even usurers themselves know." So St. Augustine calls usury detestable and odious, and he continues, "If you lend to a man, have you hope? If you expect to receive more than you have given, you are a usurer, and in this particular you are not deserving of praise but of censure." St. John Cassian said, "For every one who puts his money upon usury will deserve for this not merely no reward, but rather punishment." Please note that St. John isn't technically one of the early church fathers, but he is an ecclesial writer from this time, and St. John was the only Latin author whose work was included in the collection of the sayings of the Desert Fathers. So, as you probably recall, the Catholic Encyclopedia just told us that they couldn't find any expression of a general doctrine in the 4th and 5th centuries by the Church Fathers. But it's hard to miss the general condemnation of usury by the Fathers. But why are we spending so much time on the writings of the early Church Fathers? Well, it's because the Council of Trent decreed, in order to restrain petulant spirits, it, meaning the Council, decrees that no one, relying on his own skill, shall, in matters of faith and of morals pertaining to the edification of Christian doctrine, resting the sacred Scripture to his own senses, presume to interpret the said sacred Scripture contrary to that sense which Holy Mother Church, whose it is to judge the true sense and interpretation of the Holy Scriptures, hath held and doth hold, or even contrary to the unanimous consent of the Fathers. So the early Church Fathers unanimously condemned usury as sinful. By the unanimous consent of the Fathers, this condemnation of usury is, in fact, Catholic dogma. Finally, according to the Catholic Encyclopedia's article on St. Basil, St. Basil's second homily contains a denunciation of usury, which has become famous. So outside of the Catholic Encyclopedia's articles on usury and interest, it says that in the 4th century, St. Basil gave a famous denunciation of usury. Well, in the next installment, we'll take a closer look at St. Basil's denunciation, and we'll see how remarkable it is. But in the meantime, please check out my Facebook page, which is linked down below. Every day I post additional content that you won't see here on this YouTube channel. Also, please check out the 3 Catholic petitions that are posted down below. It'd be great if you could sign them. And finally, please pray for the Church.
It seems unfair to leave you and sell myself the